Major projection. First, tonight on Our News, the country's tourism product expected to attract more than 8 million visitors. The tourism chief breaks down the numbers. But first, indecent assault. A hospital janitor denies fondling a 20-year-old patient at Princess Margaret Hospital. We'll tell you more about the alleged incident. Plus, under investigation, a burned body is found after a car crashes into a pole and catches fire. And then in Our News at 7:30, how a son's GPA led to a beating from his mother with an electrical cord. More on her conditional discharge from today's court hearing. Our News live at 7 starts right now. Welcome to Our News live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Conditional Knowles. The acting Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism, Chester Cooper, says tourism numbers are trending up. Cooper telling parliamentarians the current trend suggests arrivals may exceed what we've seen in previous years. We'll get to that in a moment. But now to this. A janitor has been granted bail after denying allegations that he indecently assaulted a hospital patient. Prosecutors allege 39-year-old Amos Sadie fondled the breasts and private parts of a 20-year-old patient at PMH on June 15th. Sadie, who was arraigned before Magistrate Raquel Wims, denied the accusation and was granted $7,000 bail. His trial is expected to begin on July 17th. And police are investigating the stabbing of a 28-year-old man from Johnson Alley early this morning at a home off Hospital Lane. Police say around 1:30, the man and a woman were at a home on Cambridge Lane when they got into a fight. That's when police say a 22-year-old woman pulled out a knife and stabbed the man multiple times. The victim was taken to hospital in a private vehicle. We're told he is listed in stable condition. And a driver was burned to death after a car burst into flames early this morning. The incident reportedly happening around 4:30 a.m. on Carmichael Road, just west of Blue Hill. Police say the vehicle crashed into a utility pole in the area of Southwest Plaza and on impact burst into flames. Fire services responded to the scene and put out the blaze. And once that was done, firemen found a body burnt beyond recognition. Police unable to provide the make or model of the vehicle or say if the victim was a man or woman. Investigations continue, and we will certainly continue to follow that story. And now to tourism numbers that are said to be up. Acting Prime Minister and Tourism Minister Chester Cooper, as we said at the top, telling parliamentarians the numbers suggest arrivals will exceed what we've seen in previous years. Berthany McDermott has the breakdown.
As the tourism industry continues to rebound post-COVID-19, Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism Chester Cooper says arrivals are expected to exceed 8 million by the end of the year.
On this current trajectory, we fully expect to shatter the much-touted historic 2019 overall visitor arrival numbers by the end of the third quarter, and will conservatively welcome well over 8 million visitors by the end of 2023.
While contributing to the 2023-2024 budget debate, Cooper provided an update on the country's tourism numbers. At the end of April 2023, the acting Prime Minister says overall air and sea arrivals came in nearly 79% higher than 2022 numbers.
Looking specifically at the numbers between January to April 2022, we welcome an overall 1.9 million visitors. During that same period in 2019, we welcomed 2.7 million visitors. But guess what? In the same 4-month period this year, we welcomed some 3.5 million visitors.
As it stands for the first 4 months of the year, arrivals have already surpassed 2019, which has been touted as a banner year for tourism in the Bahamas. Speaking specifically to air stopover arrivals, heads and beds are also up.
Heads and beds that stay longer and spend more surpassed 2022 levels by 34% and match 2019 performance levels, pacing well ahead of overall global pre-pandemic recovery forecasts.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Berthany. And $10 million to fund the Tourism Development Corporation's business incubation centers has been secured. Cooper making that announcement today, revealing the funds come from an agreement between the Bahamas and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
The $10 million loan has been secured from the Saudi Development Fund as a result of our travels.
Yes.
It's been secured on extremely favorable terms, including a 5-year delay on any principal repayments.
Wow.
The money will be deposited in the Tourism Development Fund and will help to build incubation centers in the first phase in Nassau, Grand Bahama, and Exuma.
Now, the Bahamas Incubation Center that this money is being used to fund, it seeks to accelerate local economic development and increase tourism entrepreneurship opportunities. Cooper says it will also provide new businesses with support and resources to assist them in developing sustainable, profitable businesses.
Our research has shown that this initiative can have a vital impact on the economy by creating new entrepreneurs in our main industry. So we ain't just talking the talk, you know. We're walking the walk. Incubation centers also hope to capitalize on entertainment and cultural tourism and will highlight Bahamian cultural through experiences, through visual arts, music and dance, theater, and junk canoe, supporting the orange economy.
All right, we've got much more to get to in a moment, but for now, it's time for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Ian McKenzie, he's standing by in the Weather Center. Ian?
Thanks, Candino, and good evening, Bahamas. Currently outside our studios, we're under mostly cloudy skies with a temperature of 86. Our winds are out of the east-northeast at 12 miles per hour with a feels-like temperature of 83. Current temperatures across our country at this time: in the nation's second city, Freeport, we're under 82, Marsh Harbor 84, 86 in Allenstown, Bimini, 84 in Great Harbor Key, also 84 in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, 84 in Governor's Harbor as well, a pair of 86s in Nicholstown and in the capital. In the central Bahamas, 86 in Camps Bay, 85 in Georgetown and Deadman's Key, Long Island, 84 in Arthurstown, Kid Island, and 83 in Coburntown, San Salvador. In the southeast Bahamas, 85 in Duncantown, Ragged Island, also in Delectable Bay, Auckland, 84 in Colonel Hill, Crooked Island, 84 also in Abraham's Bay, Maguana, 88 is the hotspot in Providenciales, Turks and Caicos, and 85 in Matthewtown, Inagua. Taking a look at our satellite and radar imagery at this time, we still have this persistent trough, and it's creating some havoc across the northwest Bahamas. Right now, the brunt of it is being experienced across Grand Bahama and Abaco. Stay tuned. This is your first look at weather. More weather is still to come.
Still to come on our news, how funding and partnerships are key to road safety in tonight's Work in Progress segment. But first, learn how farmers and fishermen are being brought further into the 21st century as the Ministry of Agriculture goes digital. And back to basics, how the new BNT chief says embracing fundamentals will help better protect our national parks. The story when our news returns.
Welcome to The Rewind, an Our News monthly podcast
where we discuss various different topics in the Bahamian society.
I'm your host, Jasmine Lundy.
I'm your co-host, Janae.
I don't like eggs enough.
I get the vibes.
Right, let's put that on a shirt.
Go by our last name.
Yeah.
This is The Rewind.
Applications for the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources and Family Island Affairs just got a lot easier. 12 new online services are now available for farmers and fishermen or anyone that may need their services through My Gateway, including applications and payments for services across the Agriculture Ministry and the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Department of Marine Resources. Agriculture Minister Clay Sweeting.
Today, your government, recognizing the signs of the time, has now made it easier for you to apply for services online, eliminating bureaucracy and wasted time. No more hassle, no more traveling to New Providence if you live elsewhere just to complete a small form. Before the addition of these 12 services, we had 18, as you heard already today, services launched on My Gateway.
All right, now to the Bahamas National Trust, with a focus now on better management of national parks throughout the country. It's according to BNT Executive Director Lakeisha Anderson-Roll, who maintains the nonprofit has to get back to basics when it comes to managing the parks.
So for a very long time, the Bahamas National Trust has gone above and beyond the call of duty to respond to and act on environmental matters, sometimes outside of our scope and outside of our mission. And so I want to bring us back to the basics of managing our core mission, managing the national parks of the Bahamas through conserving and protecting the natural resources.
And she also spoke about the nonprofit organization serving as an advisory body to government.
Our act in 2010 made that amendment for us to be advisors to government on environmental matters. And so we do also sit on a number of international and national committees and working groups to be able to provide that sound counsel. So we are formal advisors to government, and we are the National Park Service for the Bahamas. And it's important because Bahamians also needs to have a better sense of shared ownership. And that's been one of our challenges. Bahamians don't see national parks as a part of, their everyday lives. They don't see it as a part of being owners in it.
All right, and be sure and stay tuned to Our News at 7:30 for more from that interview with Anderson-Roll. She talks about being the first female executive director of BNT. Sasha Lightbourne will have that story coming up in Our News at 7:30. And now to a regional financial institution that's giving its commitment to financing road safety for its members, including the Bahamas. Joshua Williams has the latest in tonight's Work in Progress segment.
The Caribbean Development Bank is doing its part in funding and ensuring road safety in all of its member countries, the Bahamas included. Of these, public transport is something that is in focus for the financial institution as countries in the region become more developed.
Our region has become highly car-centric over the past few decades. Traffic congestion and its negative impacts are major complaints as the Caribbean has become more urbanized. Improving public transport services is critical to stemming and hopefully reversing this trend.
With funding from the European Union, the CDB has developed the Road Sector Resilience Index, which seeks to do the following.
In charting pathways to increased resilience through the assessment of indicators across 5 domains, which include policies and institutions, technical planning and design, operations and maintenance, technical expertise, and financial arrangements.
And how does all of this affect the Bahamas? Speaking at the International Road Federation Congress, Ashby says partnerships and funding are key to not only road safety, but other areas of focus.
IDB has provided a line of financing to CDB for building disaster and climate resilience in the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and the Climate Action Line of Credit, accessed from the European Investment Bank, significantly increased the concessionality of financing available for infrastructure investments, including for projects here in the Bahamas.
Reporting for Work in Progress for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
When Our News comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as suspects in that Greece boat disaster last week pleads not guilty. Plus, a massive cocaine seizure in the Caribbean Sea. The U.S. Coast Guard says it's all worth nearly $200 million. And a former Attorney General delivers a keynote at the UN General Assembly. When Our News continues.
a digital wallet that allows merchants and consumers to conduct transactions seamlessly on their cell phones. Our cashless solution is safe, easy, convenient, and designed to make life easier for all.
This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. 9 Egyptian men accused of causing a disaster last week when a vessel carrying hundreds of people sank off the Greek coast have pleaded not guilty. The 9 suspects, all aged between 20 and 40, are accused of people smuggling and other offenses. A lawyer for one of the men said his client was a passenger, not a smuggler. At least 78 migrants are known to have died in the disaster, but many more are feared to have drowned. The UN's Human Rights Office says up to 500 people are still missing. MPs in the United Kingdom are debating a report which found former Prime Minister Boris Johnson deliberately misled MPs over parties in lockdown. Johnson would have faced a 90-day suspension if he were still an MP, but he quit after being sent the report's findings in advance. They also recommend he should not be allowed a pass, which lets ex-MPs freely access Parliament. The Commons is expected to approve the committee's recommendations after the former PM asked his supporters not to oppose it if it comes to a vote. Opposition Labour members say Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who is not expected at the debate, is too weak to stand up to Johnson.
The committee's report found that Mr Johnson deliberately misled the House and the committee, and in doing so committed a serious contempt. It also found that Mr Johnson breached confidence, undermined the democratic process of this House, and was complicit in a campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation of the committee.
The truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. Mr. Speaker, the words of Winston Churchill, first said in this House decades ago, and they hang over us today.
The committee's report.
The U.S. Coast Guard launched a search and rescue operation today for a submarine that went missing during an expedition of the wreckage of the Titanic. The tour company, Ocean Gate Expedition, says it is exploring and mobilizing all options to bring the crew back safely. The company says on its website that the submersible holds up to 5 people. However, it wasn't immediately clear how many people were on board. In an interview with Fox News, District 1 Coast Guard Rear Admiral John Marger said the Coast Guard is bringing all assets to bear in search of the missing vessel. And finally, from the region, the United States Coast Guard says it has seized cocaine worth more than $186 million during operations in the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. In a statement, the Coast Guard said that more than 14,153 pounds of cocaine had been offloaded last Friday following 9 separate interdictions in international waters. It did not specify, though, the period when these interdictions were carried out. Along with illicit narcotics, the U.S. Coast Guard said 12 suspected smugglers were apprehended and face prosecution in federal courts by the U.S. Department of Justice. All right, at the invitation of the President of the UN General Assembly, former Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson, KC, gave the keynote address at the beginning of the high-level debate on equal access to justice last week. Maynard Gibson says the opportunity came due to her involvement in international justice circles and studies.
This movement really started, and it's been going on for a while, but in 2019, I was a member of the Task Force for Justice that issued a report. And the imperative of access to justice and people-centered justice, there's SDG 16 and 16.3, especially access to justice, but 16 is to peaceful, just, and inclusive societies.
Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was June 19th, including the firing of 3 MPs holding cabinet appointments. And then in our news at 7:30, a Peach Street man killed after opening the front door. Investigators now on the hunt for the 31-year-old's killer. And the wild weather that led to lights out on Grand Bahama over the weekend. That's coming up when our news returns.
This is the Little Caesars Stuffed Crust Pizza. Get more pizza for less money. Only $12. It's a whole new level of pizza with cheese stuffed crust so spectacular that there's not.
Welcome back to our news. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was June 19th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history in 2012, 14 months after the ousted Ingram administration sold the majority stake in BTC to Cable and Wireless Communications, officials were back in talks with the new Perry Christie-led government. Then Prime Minister Christie, who had promised to return the majority interest in the national telecoms provider to Bahamians, confirmed he met with then CWC CEO Tony Rice, who wanted the deal to remain as is. Christie also hit back at former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram, who asserted that the BTC deal was irreversible.
We discussed in the context that they have the management of the company, that they have to serve the best interests of the country, that we will set up a process that will enable us to put our respective positions on the table and arrive at a conclusion in a reasonable period of time. And remember, Mr. Ingram also said the PLP couldn't beat him, and most certainly Perry Christie couldn't, and we saw.
Then in 2014, following an announcement by Mario's Bowling and Family Entertainment Palace that it paid $100,000 towards its hefty electricity bill, then president of BEC's Workers Union, Paul Maynard, claimed the payment was made in cash, and as a result, the cashier who accepted it was remanded. The union cried foul.
The cashiers are not going to take the flak for this. What Mr. Miller does is his business. Don't make a difference to me what the deal is. The point is, you ain't gonna pick, they're not gonna pick on the small person. It's to pay a person's bill. That's what she's there for. The cashier is there to accept money as payment for your bill.
Then June 19th, 2016.
I will go into the convention as the leader of the Free National Movement, and I will come out as the leader of the Free National Movement.
That was then Opposition Leader Dr. Hubert Minnis expressing confidence about his leadership bid for the FNM and the 2017 general elections. His comments came in the wake of persistent reports of infighting about his leadership. He said at the time, regardless of who challenged him, he would win and the party would move forward united. Then in 2017, the culture consultant, whose contract was brought under scrutiny by then Tourism Minister Dionisio de Aguilar, told Our News it was heartbreaking to hear the things that were said about him on social media and in tabloids over his 3-year contract worth over $1 million.
It's been very broad, and because a lot of the things I've worked on perhaps are not well known or confidential to particular ministers, I couldn't say, directly to perhaps tourism colleagues, that's what it was. But they know that I was busy. I mean, I had a very stressful health event.
June 9, 2018, then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis fired 3 of his own members of parliament from their cabinet-appointed positions. This after they voted against government's proposed value-added tax increase. The Cabinet Office said in a statement that parliamentary secretaries, like cabinet ministers, are bound as a condition of their continuance in office to support government decisions in public. Pine Ridge MP Frederick McAlpine was among those fired.
You can fire me, but I've been living long enough to know that I've seen people fire people, and the people who fire the people, I've watched the people fire them.
And finally, in 2019, then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis accused the Christie administration of handing out millions of dollars worth of untendered contracts like Halloween candy.
On the member of Keller Islands watch, talking about you now, on the member of Keller Islands watch, as Minister of Works, approximately $200 million in untendered contracts were awarded for contracts worth over $3.5 million.
All right, well, the Pink Place is hoping to inspire more Bahamians to take up home projects in preparation for our 50th independence celebrations, all while celebrating their own anniversary this year. Marlena Leonard has the story.
We're less than a month away from our Golden Jubilee as an independent country, and many of us are busily getting our decorations ready for the event. The Paint Place is also celebrating a big anniversary this year, celebrating 3 decades of serving the Bahamian public. General Manager Christine King shares her pride in the company, a family business whose roots go back to the early 20th century.
The Paint Place is a Bahamian-owned company, and we've been in the paint business for 30 years, like I said, the Paint Place. So it's significant for us to celebrate this milestone with the Bahamas, 50 years. We're going to be 30 years in November, so it's like a grand celebration for us this entire year.
And King says they're enjoying helping Bahamians tap into their creativity for this year's independence celebration.
We have all the colors in the rainbow and more. So you have flamingo pink, you have the sunshine yellow, you have the aquamarine. We have all of the colors. As you can see an array of colors here, you can just choose any color you want, and we have it at the Paint Place. If it's not on a file, we can make your color, we can match your color. You can bring in the flamingo and we can match any color in the flamingo.
They're making it easy for you to get your project started with a store-wide sale and all of the tools needed from start to finish on your home improvement or craft project.
Amidst the celebration, you can also paint and have some fun and enjoy your home, enjoy all things Bahamian.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Marlena. To watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, remember, you can visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Italia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Italia?
Yes, Ken. Well, a mother is arrested and wild weather leading to power outages across the north. Here are your latest headlines. A mother arrested. First tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. A woman brought before the courts today accused of beating her young son with an electrical cord. More from inside the courtroom. Also, wild weather continuing across the country, forcing power outages on some islands. Grand Bahama, just one of them. Power officials there are weighing in. Plus, downtown Nassau continues to be a major concern for government. This as the Deputy Prime Minister says publicly the area is a disappointment. And later, staying on high alert. What should you do in the event someone tries to scam you? Tonight, a Cable Bahamas expert tells you how to avoid becoming a victim. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Embrace technology and the digital transformation for better business results. For small business owners, it's essential to understand how technology can affect operational efficiencies. Modern communication relies on technology, and your customer service depends on communication. With proper tools like our fixed and mobile services, we help you stay connected. For solutions that work, ask the experts.
If new, Heineken Silver was a riveting Viking saga.
Lars the 12th, your family tortured my first wife and stole my second favorite goat. Now you want to marry my daughter. Okay.
All the taste, no bitter endings. Smooth, fresh, silver.
Whether you're battling a chronic condition or offsetting a new injury, Doctors Hospital's comprehensive rehab services offer the help you need now.
Go to doctors.
3 advanced facilities at Collins Avenue, Carmichael Road, and Cable Beach means your personalized plan for care is just a visit away. From physiotherapy to occupational therapy and speech and language pathology, our team approach is all about rebuilding together. For a full list of services, visit doctorshosp.com/rehabilitation. Doctors Hospital, trusted and best care now. Isn't your health worth it?
Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. Well, a 32-year-old woman who beat her 11-year-old son with an electrical cord over his bad grades has been granted a conditional discharge. The child's grandparents took him to hospital following the beating on June 14th, and he was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Police arrested the mother and charged her with cruelty to children. She admitted the charge at her arraignment before Magistrate Algernon Allen Jr. The court heard that the child attends a private school and his mother disciplined him because he got a 1.0 GPA. The mother will avoid having a criminal record if she attends anger management and parenting classes for 4 months. A failure to comply with the conditions will result in the woman having to pay a $3,000 fine and serving a 6-month prison sentence. She's expected to return to court on October 19th for a status report. Answering the front door turned deadly for a 31-year-old man who was shot to death early this morning. Police say it was just after 1:30 when the victim was at a Peach Street home along with his girlfriend. He heard a knock at the door, opened it, and was shot multiple times. Police say he died on the scene. Now, this latest homicide came a day after 2 murders on Saturday. In the first deadly incident, a man was killed in a shanty town off Cowpen Road. In the second, another man was killed on Wolf and Claridge Roads. Investigations into all matters are continuing. Just like here in the capital, Grand Bahama experienced some adverse weather conditions over the weekend, and as a result, the heavy rain and winds forced the power to go out. Chief Operating Officer at the Grand Bahama Power Company, Nikita Mulling, says about 10% of customers were impacted.
We did have teams that were prepared and able to respond as long as it is safe to do so. And so we want to remind customers that safety is our first priority. And so one of the things we never do is put our crews or our employees into harm's way. And so as long as it is safe to do so, we were able to dispatch crews to isolated areas that may have experienced power outages to get those customers back on safely and expeditiously.
But the COO admits that earlier this year they lost one of their base units at GBPC's main plant, which has been causing issues for some customers.
We would have also been making an assessment, and we know that customers would have experienced some reliability challenges due to the loss of that unit and peak. And so what the team was able to do was make a decision to bring in some temporary generation that will add some relief and improvement in our reliability issues that we are facing.
All right, still on the topic of electricity, Central and South Abaco Member of Parliament John Pinder labeling Bahama's power and light as disgraceful as residents there face hours-long outages last week. As a result, Pinder is calling for more authority to be given to Family Island general managers and for the power giant, to decentralize his operations.
Not only more authority, more human capital, and more financial resources. This past months now, but I'll speak about this past week, our power has been on less than a quarter, less than 30% of the time. Our islands are packed. We have tourism budding, demand is high, yet the power is not only not steady and off, but when it comes on, it comes right back off immediately.
Well, a BPL notice said the company had transmission line issues. Pinder says Abaconians are losing money. Food is going spoiled and appliances are being damaged. He's also calling for immediate remediation and help for the island and other family islands.
Furthermore, I think it's time we explore partnerships with other entities to make BPL stronger nationwide. We are an archipelago spread over 100,000 square miles and dozens and dozens and dozens of communities that need reliable power. So this is something Central and South Abaco I'm going to be pushing for. I will not stop, and I've had multiple meetings with the chairman of BPL.
Another wet day in the capital and tropical storm Brett forms in the Atlantic with a possible threat to the Caribbean islands. Meteorologist Ian McKenzie is in the Weather Center with a first look at weather. Ian?
Thanks, Italia, and good evening, Bahamas. Here's a look at your forecast. Currently outside our studios, we're under mostly cloudy skies with a temperature of 86. Our winds are out of the east-northeast at 12 miles per hour with a feels-like temperature of 80. Taking a look at our satellite and radar imagery at this time, we still have this persistent trough across the extreme northwest Bahamas, and some of it is actually digging down even into the lower northwest Bahamas, where we experienced one or two severe weather events in the capital over the weekend. This weather pattern will persist across our area through most of the week. This is your first look at weather. Stay tuned. Our extended forecast is still to come.
A disappointment still to come in our news. Those words coming from the Deputy Prime Minister on the state of downtown Nassau. Here are government's plans to rectify the situation. Plus, if you're targeted by a scammer, do you know how to respond? Tonight, a Cable Bahamas expert is sharing some tips to follow. And later, an inside look into the rewarding career of BNT's executive director. Our Sasha Lightbourne has the exclusive interview. That's all coming up when our news returns. Tourism and Investment Minister Chester Cooper calling the downtown area a disappointment, adding that government will not allow it to remain in the state it's been in for decades.
The poor state of our capital city center is even more glaring now that the port is there. We are working with the Downtown Nassau Partnership to create and to execute an overall plan for downtown. We've already begun stakeholder engagement. We've devised a plan with quick wins and wins with a short, medium, and long-term horizon.
Now, the state of the downtown area has been concerning for quite some time now. Recently, Royal Caribbean President Michael Bailey said downtown Nassau ranks in the bottom 10% with its guests. Cooper says the plan is to increase police presence in the area and to keep it clean. Additionally, 9 buildings have been identified for demolition.
And I want to be very clear about this. Drug peddlers, hackers, hagglers, prostitutes, harassers, thieves, and troublemakers are not welcome downtown. But there will certainly be a zero tolerance downtown, and the mission of the police is to remove them.
All right, well, phone scammers are getting smarter. That's according to the Information Security Director for the Cable Bahamas group of companies, Shakira Roll. She's offering these tips to spot the fakes and stop yourself from becoming a victim.
We got a specific incident where they were given a phone number to call back, and the background noise, the background music, the wait music is identical to the bank that was being purported at that time. And so the information that you hear is very similar, and they make it seem very real.
She says there are telltale signs of it not being a genuine call, saying that her department has gone undercover and called the numbers themselves. Roll urges people not to click links or call unfamiliar numbers when prompted by a suspicious caller.
We went and actually called the numbers ourselves, and you would notice that the information, the sound in the back is distorted, and the person on the other side was very aggressive. So they actually did everything they can to get the information from you as quickly as possible before you kind of catch on that they're not the real thing. So even through text messages, they would send a link that would seemingly take you to the bank's website. So do not click on these links in the text messages. You go ahead and go to the official sites with the website or the web addresses that you are aware of.
She's now been in the post for 6 months, but this is her first one-on-one interview about being the first female appointed as the executive director of the Bahamas National Trust. Our Sasha Lightbourne has the exclusive.
Lakeisha Anderson Roll was appointed as the executive director of the Bahamas National Trust last year. She officially assumed the post in January 2023. But she's no stranger to the BNT. In fact, she's been working for the nonprofit organization for 11 years. During our one-on-one interview, she told me about the goals for her first year in office.
At the end of year one, we want to come up with a 5-year strategic plan. We want to be able to bring more innovation in the work that we do. We want to be able to build more sustainably. We want to have more Bahamians involved and to become BNT members.
And there's more. She has big plans for the country's national parks.
I also want to see us with more sustainably developed national parks, moving away from the paper park concept to have more properly managed parks with staff, with infrastructure to support visitation. We want to be able to have these spaces as a true indication and playing an integral role in our country's management.
Now, as for being the first woman to hold the post, Anderson Roll shared this.
Regardless if it's a female or not, this role is extremely demanding, but it's also very rewarding to be able to connect with so many people, so many persons that have an interest with the BNT and who also has an interest in conserving across the islands where, not only where we operate, but areas where we don't have current national parks. And so we've been meeting to be able to sit down and have the conversation, how can we work together?
We will have more from the BNT Executive Director and the other initiatives she plans on introducing to the BNT in a later newscast. Reporting for Our News, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
All right, thanks, Sasha. When our news comes back from the break, another national swim tournament is in the books. And John Galt Jones gets her first double-double of the season. And keep your umbrellas and raincoats close, as another rainy day in the capital. Forecaster Ian McKenzie is back in the Weather Center when our news returns.
When I had got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
Today's sports update is sponsored by Michelob Ultra, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
This is our news. Welcome back. The National Swim Championships concluded over the weekend, and John Galt Jones hits a big milestone in her recovery. Here's Tej Adderley with a check on sports. Tej?
Thanks, Italia. Multiple records fell on the final day of the Bahamas National Swim Championships as the Mako Aquatic Swim Club won their 5th straight meet. Our Sasha Lightbourne attended the final day, and she filed this report.
And with that, Mako Aquatic Swim Team became 5-time defending champions at the Bahamas National Swimming Championships. The club racked up 2,689 points. Their head coach, Trevano McPhee.
It feels great. It's an excellent accomplishment for these swimmers. We've been preparing for this, from last nationals. So, to see them, come out on top, swim personal best times, records being broken is very, very, very happy to see that.
Coming in second was the Barracuda Swim Club with 1,569 points, and in third, Alpha Aquatics with 1,519 points. Now, as for some of those new national record holders and how they felt their races went,
this afternoon, just relax, just having fun, cracking jokes with the boys, just having fun.
Well, my competitor, Alyssa Ferguson, she definitely pushed me a lot because I thought she was going to beat me, but I came back on that last 100, and I really fight to get that record.
The girl from the USA, she's very fast. I was trying to keep up with her because I know, if I keep up with her, I'm going to be able to break the record, and so I kept up with her, and that's what I did.
Now, we'll have more for you from the Swim Nationals in a later newscast. Reporting for our sports, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
Thank you, Sasha. Congratulations to the Mako's Aquatics Club and to all of the elite swimmers who competed. Moving on to some hoops. Jonquel Jones suffered a fractured foot in the finals last year, limited her playing time. As a result, her numbers were down this season. It looks like that foot is getting a lot better. Jonquel Jones logged her first double-double of the season as her New York Liberty pummeled the Phoenix Mercury yesterday, 89-71. JJ scored 13 points on 5 of 10 shooting and grabbed 11 rebounds in the rout. Brianna Stewart added 28 points and 14 rebounds for the Liberty. The Mercury were playing without star center Brittany Griner, who was out with a hurt hip, giving JJ and Brianna Stewart free rein in the paint. Sophie Cunningham led Phoenix in her place with 27 points. Now keep in mind, Jones did all that while being on a minute restriction. They're going to be a problem in the playoffs when she gets healthy. That's all for sports today. I'm Tage Adderley.
Still ahead on our news tonight, a 27-year-old West Grand Bahamian native is now a doctor of disaster management. Hear how he chases dreams despite the odds. And later, another wet day in the capital and the second storm for the Atlantic hurricane season was named. Ian is back with more weather details when our news returns. Stay with us. Welcome back to our news. A tropical depression has formed in the East Atlantic, which forecasters are keeping a close eye on. Meteorologist Ian McKenzie is back in the Weather Center with more details. Ian?
Thanks, Italia. Welcome back, everyone. Here's a look at your extended forecast. Right now, the tropic is getting pretty active. We have newly formed Tropical Storm Brett that just formed at 5 p.m. this afternoon. Right, just trailing it, we also have an active tropical wave. And Brett right now is moving towards the west at about 20 miles per hour with speeds at about 40 miles per hour, and it should impact the Lesser Antilles by about late to mid-week. It is expected as it approaches the Lesser Antilles to become a hurricane, so we want to continue to monitor this system over the next several days. Closer to home, again, this persistent trough will continue to trigger pockets of showers and thunderstorms mainly across the extreme northwest and northwest Bahamas. Elsewhere, weak high pressure pattern will dominate the central and southeast Bahamas. Taking a look at our boating forecast at this time, in the northwest Bahamas, we have southerly winds at 10 knots or less, falling light and variable at times. Seas will be 1 to 3 feet over the ocean, and you can expect a high tide tonight at 9:46 p.m. In the central and southeast Bahamas, winds will be east to southeast at 10 to 15 knots. Seas will be 1 to 3 near shore, but up to 2 to 4 feet offshore. Here's a look at your national forecast. And in your extended forecast, as promised, rainy weather pretty much throughout most of the week. Those highs will be getting up into the low 90s, popping up upper mid 90 here and there. Elsewhere, we're looking at lows getting down into the mid to upper 70s, and even some nights, muggy conditions where the temperature will stay around the 80-degree mark. That's your forecast for this evening. Make it a great evening, everyone.
All right, thanks so much, Ian. And now to some good news. A young man from West Grand Bahama recently graduated with a PhD in disaster management. He's the first Bahamian to obtain the degree. In this report, he's sharing why Bahamians should be more interested in the field. Let's take a look.
No, the first thing I tell anyone, my name is Trevor Johnson and I'm from Holmes' Rock. It's the place that made me the man that I am today. I was truly raised by a village.
And that's Dr. Trevor Johnson, Jr., a West Grand Bahama native and the first Bahamian to obtain a PhD in disaster management. Johnson says he always had an interest in disasters and how they impact different socio-economic sectors.
I actually did my dissertation, my thesis for my master's project on the impacts of hurricanes on the education sector. And that research, as well as my experience working with local disaster consultative committees, really fueled my passion for disaster management.
He attended North Dakota State University.
I also would have taught during that time as well. I taught an introduction to disaster management course at North Dakota State University, and it was a lot. It was a very stressful time, most stressful 3 years of my life. I'm happy it's done.
Dr. Johnson now works for the Inter-American Development Bank and the Pacific Disaster Center. While he's pleased with the public support on his recent achievement, he says the fact that he's the only Bahamian with the degree illustrates that there's a lot more work to be done in the country.
Currently, disaster management in this country is taking a significant shift, and we need to ensure that we have persons who are capable of managing this shift. So it is my hope that other Bahamians, many others, can decide to venture into this field so that we can ensure the resilience and sustainability of our country.
And he's telling other young people to follow their dreams.
I heard no several times. I got some declines as well, but I didn't allow that to really stagnate me. I used that as an impetus because I knew my end goal. I knew what I wanted to do.
And as for what's next?
I look forward to continuing to work very closely with the government of the Bahamas on various projects that the bank is executing with the government. And secondly, I also look to doing work with the PDC and countries around the world. I'm currently a part of a team going into Ghana very soon, and also to do some work in Colombia. So I look forward not only to shaping and fostering resilience in the Bahamas, but also in other least developed and developing nations around the world.
All right, congrats again, Dr. Johnson, my fellow West Grand Bahamian and godbrother. And to see that story again is available now at ournews.bs. With that, we thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.